My name is Don Dagenet. I'm a preview speaker with the Lyric Opera Guild. And the Lyric Opera Guild is the fan club, you might say, the support organization, the auxiliary for the Lyric Opera of Kansas City, made up of volunteers who do things like artist hospitality and artist education and try to help the company raise money through fundraising trips and things like that. So we're the people who sponsor the previews given before the performances, and I'm one of the guys who gives those talks. And you pick up what was the Victorian England version of Mad magazine. It's called Fun magazine, just a completely ridiculous publication that has absurd, humorous, satirical articles in it. And you notice that the star of that magazine appears to be a guy whose name is W.S. Gilbert. And so you go to Gilbert and you ask him if he would be willing to write some comic librettos for these operettas. It turns out he's a playwright too. He's done some comic plays, and he says sure, he'd be willing to. And so then you've got your librettist, but you need somebody in hand to write the music. And so you come up with a most audacious idea. You decide to ask the leading classical music composer in England at the time, whose name is Arthur Sullivan, to see if he would write music to these ridiculous comic librettos. Now, this is quite a bold move, actually, because Arthur Sullivan is a guy who was sort of the English Mozart. I mean, he was trained and educated in the finest music conservatories of Germany. He was the official court composer for Queen Victoria. He wrote religious music. He wrote music for serious events, such as incidental music to Shakespeare plays. He wrote church hymns. This is a very staid kind of classical composer, and you would never dream that he might be willing to use his music for staged farces, and yet Sullivan has kind of a humorous streak to him, and he kind of likes the idea. So acting as an intermediary between these two, you put Gilbert and Sullivan together, and sure enough, they come up with kind of a comic piece called Trial by Jury. Now, Gilbert started out as a lawyer in England, and he was a really bad lawyer. He was so bad that his clients even threw things at him in courtrooms, which is why he went into writing comic plays in the first place. But anyway, so they come up with this satire on the Victorian England justice system called Trial by Jury, and it's a great hit. And after a couple of more tries, they finally hit upon the classic formula, and they produce a work called H.M.S Pinafore. Now, in H.M.S Pinafore, first of all, the name is ridiculous. You know what a pinafore is, don't you? It's an article of women's clothing. It would be like the USS Petticoat or something like that. So that's what this opera's about. You wouldn't name a ship after a pinafore, but, you know, this is operetta. So that gives you a clue right there as to how ridiculous this piece is going to be. But they've hit upon a comic formula, and here's their formula. They take a friendly but rather befuddled man who doesn't quite get what's going on, and then he has a beautiful daughter, and his daughter's a soprano, and she's in love with a handsome young man who, of course, is a tenor. And then you throw in kind of an old, crusty character who's a takeoff on Victorian society, usually somebody who occupies some position for which they are in no way qualified, but they've gotten there by means of licking other people's boots. And so you put that character in there. And then you've got a friendly person, usually a baritone, who's sort of assisting the young lovers to get together. And then you top it off with sort of a matronly, elderly lady who really has designs on the tenor. But she's going to be defeated in the end, we all know that, and she's sung by a mezzo-soprano. So you put together this cast of characters and put them in a situation in a particular plot that Gilbert comes up with, which was usually utterly ridiculous, and that's your formula for a Gilbert and Sullivan operetta. Well, with the H.M.S Pinafore, they were enormously successful. This was a great hit that ran for years in London and in New York and all over the world, anywhere where they speak English. As a matter of fact, it was translated into over 30 foreign languages. Even though you wouldn't think that people in Japan would be catching on to Victorian satire, it was a hit there as well. So H.M.S Pinafore was the great hit of Gilbert and Sullivan's early career, this two unlikely people who got together. And they went on to write many other great hits, such as The Pirates of Penzance, which the Lyric Opera did last year, and The Mikado and The Gondoliers and many, many others. But H.M.S Pinafore is where it's all started. So if you want to know what Gilbert and Sullivan has in common with Mad magazine, come to the Lyric Opera this November and enjoy H.M.S Pinafore.